Hi guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make the thistle stitch. You can see you can work it up in the same color throughout or change colors at different times to give the thistle the green and purple look that we all know from the real version, the version of the thistle flower that we see in real life. So you can see with the colors the stitch really does pop out more, and you can have a much clearer look about, in terms of how it looks. But then again, the single color one is a bit more discreet, a bit more refined if you're looking for something more subtle. One thing to bear in mind is that if you do choose the colored one, and I'll show you a couple of tips around that, is that you will have a number of ends to sew. You'll see I've done this already. There's a couple of ways you can avoid this little line here. We'll talk about this a bit more in this tutorial, but if you're starting off and you're thinking, I want to do the colored one, but you hate different weaving in ends and so on, maybe try the single colored one. Either way, it's a great stitch. Looks more complicated than it is. One thing I'd highlight that for me, it was actually much easier to work the pattern with the colors because I could more easily tell the different stitches apart. There's a few bits here where you really want to pay attention to your stitches and double count to make sure that everything is going according to the instructions. So before we get started, just to say that I found the initial stitch here in this book called 200 Crochet Stitches from Sarah Hazel. It's a beautiful book, great book. I thought I had learned all the crochet stitches there were just by looking up YouTube videos, but really, if you love crochet, do take time to invest in a book. A lot of them have some really great stitches, and they're really worth you looking them up. And I guess the Thistle Stitch is just one example of this. So to get started, you need your different colored yarns. Again, if you're doing a single color, pick the one you prefer. I've decided to use a purple and a green to imitate the real life colors of the thistle. You won't need too much of this. Your base color really will be the main color you use. I'm using Paintbox DK acrylic yarn, and I will put all the details about the colors and the color codes in the description box below. You will also need a hook. I'm using a 3.5 millimeter hook. You also need a darning needle and a pair of scissors or something to cut your yarn with. For the purposes of this video, I will only do one pattern repeat as a swatch, which means you'll have two little thistles and then one in the middle further up. However, of course, you essentially put as many pattern repeats for your own piece of work. I would always recommend that you do a quick swatch using the yarn that you're using and hook that you're using, just to make sure that your tension is fine so you can get a more accurate measurement of what your final piece will look like. You will start by putting a single crochet stitch in the second chain from hook, and I'm using US terminology here. So this is your first chain, you never count the loop on your hook, and this is your second chain. So that's where I'm going to put a single crochet. So go through the chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through, and I have one single crochet here. And I will do another 4 single crochets, one in each of the next 4 chains. So I'm essentially looking for a total of 5 single crochets to kick off. Now here I've done 4. I know that for my 5th one, I will need to change colors because my 6th one will be the first time that I make the base of the thistle, right? And so to change colors, you never complete your crochet stitch with the same yarn color. You essentially change it to complete it with your new color. So let me show you how this happens. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets, and I know I need to do a fifth one. So I start off my single crochet, put my hook through the chain, I yarn over, I pull through, but now I drop this yarn. I'm still holding it with my right hand, and I'll bring some of my green, which is what I want to use. And so I will place it on top of my hook as if I'm yarning over, and that's how I'll pull through the remaining bit of my single crochet. And now you see the stitch has finished in the right color, but I've got already my yarn ready in the new color that I need for that 6th stitch. So this 6th stitch is essentially the first stitch where we will make the base, if you like, of the crochet, the thistle stitch. So that's where the main stem and the 2 leaves will come out from. And of course, in your project, if you want that to start further on, just single crochet or do the stitch of your preference for as many rows as you like and start it off there. But I want to kick off with my pattern right away. So to do that, the first thing is, if you want to secure your yarn, the new green yarn, you should hold it in the back so that you pick it up when you single crochet. And you can also do the same with the blue light yarn here, so that you carry it through, because essentially our stem stitch will only be for one chain, and then we'll continue using this color. So we also want it to come through on this other side. So make sure these are snugly sort of fitted there. And what you will do is you will put 1 single crochet in the next chain, picking up those strands of yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. That's your first single crochet in this stitch. Now you will chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you'll go back into the same stitch and do another single crochet, like so. Again, picking up those yarn, the other pieces of yarn, secure them. We'll weave them in the end, but it's good practice to just secure them in the back. And now you will chain 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you've guessed it, we're going to go back into that same stitch and do a single crochet. Like this. And then again, we're going to do 8 chains. So 1, 2. And 1 last single crochet in that same chain. So the one thing to bear in mind here is that this is your last stitch in your green color. So drop your green color, right, and pick up your blue or whatever is your base color, and use that to yarn over and pull through. Make sure you give the green colors a good little tug, like this. And here you see you have the beginning of your thistle stitch. Doesn't look much for the moment, but it will. So here I am. I've completed 12 single crochets, and I'm about to finish off my 13th single crochet. But again, in our next stitch, we will be placing a thistle stitch. So again, I need to finish off this last single crochet using my green colored yarn so that I can start off my thistle stitch in the right way. And so for this pattern repeat, like I said, I'm only doing 21 plus 5, so essentially 1 repeat. I'll have the 2 thistles here, and then my piece ends, which means that I have space for 1 thistle stitch here and then 5 single crochets here, which is how we started our row with 5 single crochets. If you were doing multiples, so you had you had done, let's say, 42 chains plus 5 or something like that, then you would essentially repeat this pattern or this sequence until you effectively also had 6 stitches left. And then at that point you would end with a thistle stitch and then do another 5 single crochets. So your end will still be the same as mine, it's just you will have done a lot more thistle stitches and single crochets in the middle, in between. So let's do our thistle stitch. Grab your yarn here, make a single crochet, chain 8, and then chain 10 after you've done your single crochet in the middle. Then 1, and your last single crochet here. And again, like we did before, the last pass, this yarning over, we will do that, we will complete that with the base color, the main color of your work, so that the last single crochet stitches can start off with the right color. And there we go, our last few single crochet stitches for this row. It should be 5 single crochets in your base color here. And then to finish your row, you chain 1 and turn. So for your second row, what you need to do is essentially single crochet across all the stitches. But obviously here, for each of your thistle stitch, you've created a few more stitches. You actually have 4 single crochets where you used to have 1. So what we will do for those stitches is we will skip the first single crochet, and then we will do a decrease by picking up the middle single crochet between the chain 8 and the chain 10, and the other single crochet between the chain 10 and then chain 8. So you will work a decrease here, and then you will skip that last single crochet. And that's one of the reasons that I sometimes feel that you can work this stitch much more easily in color, because you always know which stitch to skip and where you need to pick up again. But bottom line, you should finish this row with your original amount of stitches. So that would be the number of chains you made in the first place, minus the one that you've used as your turning chain. But let me explain as we go along. So here we have our first stitches here. So here we will just crochet along, put a single crochet like normal. Remember from our previous row, we finished off with 5 single crochets. Right, so 3, 4, let me get some yarn. And 5 here. But now here we know we have a single crochet, another single crochet, another single crochet, and a single crochet here. So we skip this guy here, right, and the loop, but then we will place our hook in this single crochet here, like this. we'll yarn over and pull through. And keep it as tight as possible, because one of the things that this decrease does is also pull the thistle stitch a bit together. And the other thing to bear in mind is pull that main chain 10 downwards. You don't want to work your decrease with your yarn in front of it, because then that other differently colored yarn will be in front of your green stitch, and you don't want that. You want it to look seamless. So pull your main chain 10 loop down, find the single crochet in between the chain 8 and the chain 10, go through it again with your hook like this, yarn over and pull through. Make sure it's all tight and nothing is trapped. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops here and tighten it. And now you'll see you've essentially made 1 stitch out of 2. And the next thing you will do is you will pull that loop away, that chain 8, so it doesn't bother you. You will skip the stitch in between, this guy here, and you will just continue doing the single crochet just like normal in the chains in between. And you'll just do that for every thistle stitch that you've made in the previous row. And like I said, one very easy way of making sure that you're on the right track is just to check that you have the same number of stitches as the number of chains that you worked in, or the chains you made, minus 1. So in my case, I had made 26 chains. I should end up with 25 stitches. So let me finish this row and I'll meet you back at the end so that we can see how this row looks. So here we are. I've finished this second row and I've chained 1, and you can see, if I count, that I should have 25 stitches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25, right? So that's the right amount of stitches, and I can now do my third row, which will be just single crochet stitches across the entire row. So again, for me, I had 25 stitches to begin with. I should have 25 stitches when I finish this row 3, and at the end of the row I will do a chain 1 and I'll turn my piece. So I'll meet you on completion of row 3 to start our row 4. So here I am, I've done my row 3 and I've chained 1, I've turned my piece. I still have my original number of stitches, and now in this row what you should do is you should do another row of single crochet stitches, but in this row we will also fix the position of the 2 side leaves of our thistle stitches. Now if you want, you can skip this step and just do a normal row of single crochet stitches, assuming you want to indeed fix your loops against the background. What I like doing is using the remaining piece from my green yarn, and I had these pieces already cut out at the beginning, but you can also do it as you go. Just leave a few inches once you've completed your thistle stitch and cut your yarn, and then start fresh with the next thistle stitch. So you can either use your yarn here and just pick it up and do that single crochet to fix your leaf so it looks green on green, and then continue with your normal background yarn, or you can use your background yarn, but bear in mind that you will have a loop where this color, which is obviously bright and therefore contrasts against the green, that will show. Or like I said before, you can also skip the fixing of the loops against the background. For the purposes of this tutorial, I will just pick up the yarn from my Thistle Stitch and use it to secure those two loops. If I was doing a piece where having a piece of strand in the back bothered me a lot, what I would probably do is just cut a tiny piece of yarn and use it to just have that one stitch there so that you don't see the yarn traveling up a couple of rows. However, I'll show you how that looks and you can make up your mind as to what you prefer doing for your own piece. So let's turn our work, and what you will do is you will chain one, and then you'll start your you will do a single crochet in that first stitch, and then you will do a second single crochet. But before finishing that single crochet, you'll put your yarn down and you'll pick up that remaining yarn from your Thistle Stitch. You may want to give yourself a bit more yarn than what I've left myself. I've left it a bit tight, but essentially you will finish your single crochet with that color, and then you'll put your hook through the stitch like this, and then you'll turn your piece around and grab your loop. So let me show you. I'm talking about the first chain 8 loop here, and then you'll yarn over, pull through, and of course we're only doing one single stitch in green here, so you can take your yarn, drop your green yarn, take your background or main color yarn and yarn over and pull through using that color. Like I said, it is a bit fiddly, but I much prefer this look where I have green on green rather than having a really light contrasting color on it. But try it, see what you prefer, or like I said, if you don't want to be bothered, just drop that step entirely and just single crochet across all your stitches. So the next step will be to do 5 single crochets. But what I would like to do is carry the green yarn with me. And that's because on the 6th stitch, or rather I will need to finish the 5th stitch with the green yarn and do the 6th single crochet stitch in green so that I can pick up that extra loop here, the third loop and second chain 8 loop. So let me show you how I do that. So just keep it in the back so it doesn't appear much. But 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Drop it. And like I said, I should have left myself just a bit more yarn here, but there we go. Then I put my hook, just like I did before, through the next stitch. I pick up the 3rd loop, make sure it's always the 3rd. It's happened to me many times when I've picked the wrong loop. Yarn over with your green yarn, like so. Bring your green yarn in the back, pick up the main colored one, yarn over and pull through both loops like that. So here you see, if I can turn it around, that our loops are secure, and you can play around and make sure they look pretty and they're in the right position, the position that you want them. But your 3rd one is still kind of free. So once you've done that, you will place 6 single crochet stitches, and in the 7th one you will finish it again with the green yarn from this Thistle Stitch. So here you will see, just to show you how the back of this looks, once you've tied or weaved in your ends and tidied this up, really the only piece of yarn that will show is this. is the place where you carried your green yarn from your main thistle stitch to catch those side stitches. So if that is bothering you, or you're doing a blanket and you don't like it, please feel free to use any of the alternatives I provided. Otherwise, in my case, this is a swatch, and for the different products that I'm making using this stitch, like a beanie or a headband, that doesn't really matter because nobody will ever see it, nor will it get caught in anything. So it's not much of a problem for me. So for this row, all we're going to do is do a single crochet across the entire row. Again, you should have the same number of stitches. There's no increase or decrease, and it's a great opportunity to capture in the back of your stitch the remaining green yarn, so that you don't have to weave it in later with a darning needle. So I'll finish up this row and I'll meet you to start the next one. And in the next row, we will actually start with our flower stitch. So we will be using the purple color. So now I'm ready to start row 6. And this is where we will start off with our flower stitch in purple. Now, as you have seen, I used my last row of single crochets just to weave in the green ends. So really, I only have a couple to do, which is excellent. And because our main stitch will be in front of it, or the main loop will be in front of it, you can't even tell that the yarn has been carried through. So for your 5th stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, drop your main color yarn and pick up your purple yarn. And again, loop it through your hook and pull it through your loops that are on your hook. And now what you will want to do is, again, take those 2 strings of yarn, and as you go through your next stitch, pick them up together to secure them a bit more. What you will also need to do is pick up your chain 10 loop and pick it up as well. And what you will do in that next stitch, and only the first one is a bit fiddly, the other ones are fine, is to place 6 double crochets. So yarn over, go through the stitch. Here's the bits and bobs of yarn that we want to make sure are trapped inside that stitch. Here's the actual single crochet stitch you're picking up from the row before, and then you're also picking up the loop. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. And now you see they've kind of fallen in place, so the rest of your double crochets should not be as difficult. And you will place a total of 6 double crochet. So we've got 3, 4, 5, and 6. And as you've probably guessed, after you've have finished your double crochet, you want the last yarn over and the last sort of 2 loops to be finished off using your background color. And that's again because we will be switching colors. And then what you need to make sure is that you don't miss another stitch, because you will just single crochet across the next 13 stitches. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Again, here we're about to make another flower stitch. So what I'll do is I'll leave a bit of a tail in the purple yarn here, not too much because I don't need to do anything else really with my purple yarn. But I'll snip it off and I'll attach it here to finish off that 13th chain, that 13th, stitch. And I'll do the same. And again, if you're making a bigger piece than I am, you will just continue, you'll do, you'll single crochet 13, you'll do your flower stitch, single crochet 13, and so on and so forth until you have 6 chains left, 6 stitches, 6 stitches left, in which case in the first one you'll put your flower stitch, and then in the remaining 5 you'll put a single crochet just like we're going to do here. Then you're going to chain 1 and turn your piece around. So let's do this and I'll meet you for the next row. So here you can see that our little thistle stitch is really taking shape. In this row, what we will do is we will just single crochet across the entire row, and we will simply skip our double crochets here and just do 1 chain. However, what we also want to do is start building the thistle stitch that will, or building rather the thistle that will be in between our 2 existing ones. So we will place another thistle stitch using our green color. So let me show you how we do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So 5 single crochets in our first few stitches. And again, those are essentially the 5 stitches we always work in when we are going to do something for our thistle stitch. We're going to chain 1, skip this one, skip the double crochets, which again makes the flower stitch pop more. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th one we won't fully complete because we want to start our green yarn, because on that 7th stitch after our chain 1 we will start our new thistle stitch, which is done in exactly the same way. And again, take a piece of green yarn, make sure the smaller edge is adjacent or parallel to your stitches so you can capture it as you go. So again, single crochet, chain 8, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 7, 8, single crochet, chain 10, you know the drill, just do the stitch just like you did the ones before. And here in the last single crochet, just make sure that you drop your green yarn and pick up the background one. And again, give your green yarn a tug to make sure everything is snug. Single crochet, use also picking up that background green, the smaller edge, so you don't have to weave it in again afterwards. Just make sure it's in the back so it doesn't show. Again, you'll do 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 here. Chain 1 to skip your flower, and then chain 5 for the remaining 5. And again, if you were doing a larger piece, then after you'd made your thistle stitch again, you would have 6. You would jump your flower here, your 6 double crochets with a chain 1, and then just like we did here, you would do another 6, a thistle stitch, another 6 single crochets, and so on and so forth until you had really 6 stitches left. And the first one would be this double one, which you would skip with a chain 1, and then you would do your remaining 5. So really this is how the thistle stitch is worked. After you've completed this row here, you will work a row of single crochets doing the decrease as we did before for your thistle stitch. You will then work another row of single crochets, just normal single crochets, and then in the row after you'll capture or you'll secure, or not if you're not doing that step, your little side leaves here. You will then do another row of single crochets, and then you work your flower, and then again you will work in the next row. You will start again by placing the thistle stitches in the same places where we placed them here, and doing that chain 1 on top of your flower. So here I worked a few more rows of the thistle stitch just to show you how the different rows work up. But essentially from the moment that you've really started and almost finished the flower in this little thistle stitch here, the pattern repeats itself. You just start from the previous rows and you build up the same pattern again, and it just repeats itself. So have a look at my blog for all the details about how to make the stitch, plus additional tips for how to put it in patterns, whether you're working it in the flat or in the round. I really do hope you tried the thistle stitch, whether you're in Scotland or elsewhere, and happy crochet!